Hey guys, so just before we get into today's video, I wanted to say that of all the people who have helped me see the intellectual flaws in atheism, none has impacted me as much as William Lane Craig. He has debated the foremost atheists in the world, including people like Christopher Hitchens, Sam Harris, and Lawrence Krauss. I highly encourage everyone to watch these debates. Just YouTube William Lane Craig debates. Now, I obviously have serious theological issues with Dr. Craig, but watching him deal with atheist arguments helped me to realize how weak many of the atheist arguments are when rigorously scrutinized. So check him out on YouTube. You won't regret it. Hey everybody, and welcome to today's show. I'm the host of Thoughtful Faith, Jacob Hansen, and joining me today is my friend Brian Stutzman. Brian, how are you?
Hey, it's good to see you again.
Hey, just so everybody knows, Brian is an expert on the subject of the martyrdom of Joseph Smith, and specifically about, is it the city of Warsaw? Tell me a little bit about that.
Warsaw. A lot of members of the church know a lot about Nauvoo and Carthage, but the third city in Hancock County is Warsaw, Illinois. And I went there about 9 years ago with one of my sons, and I just wanted to buy a book of their history, and there was none. So I spent about 4, 5, 6 years researching the city, went back there many times, got a lot of primary sources, and wrote the first history of Warsaw, Illinois.
Awesome.
And it's where the mob came from. It's also got a fascinating history, but it was the nemesis of Nauvoo back in the Mormon period, 1839 to 1846. And so there was a lot of interest, did a lot of talks and brought podcasts and things. And then what happened was about a year and a half ago, maybe, there was a group of people that came forth and challenged the narrative that we know in the saints and all the regular history books of the martyrdom. And they came out and said, well, gosh, John Taylor and Willard Richards killed Joseph Smith in the Carthage jail. It wasn't a mob. And people contacted me and had read my book and said, you got to come and say something about this. And so as I examined the claims of the other group, it's malarkey, to quote a political figure.
Well, I feel like there's some groups right now who are trying to write an alternative history of the church where Joseph didn't practice polygamy, and where there are all these back conspiracies going on with Brigham Young and John Taylor. And so I see this as sort of an extension of that, where you have these people putting out saying you've all been lied to about the martyrdom, but you obviously have a very different take on that.
So let's talk about who killed Joseph Smith, or who really killed Joseph Smith. There's a group out there that says, well, they've looked up some journals and they say, well, there were some boys that climbed the stairs at Carthage jail because somebody referred to them as boys. And as we know, that was a common term. Joseph Smith referred to the Nauvoo Legion as his boys, but it wasn't teenagers, it was men. So
I refer to my boys when we go to do something. Man, I'm going out with the boys.
Boating, golfing, whatever. Okay. So their claim is some boys climbed the stairs and just happened to be there at the right time that Willard Richards and John Taylor pulled guns on Joseph and Ironman and killed him. And it was a political, religious coup, take over the church. And then all of a sudden, their guy, Brigham Young's the prophet. Well, that's just so outlandish. Let me tell you kind of what happened. I'll tell you why. First of all, we didn't know Brigham Young was going to take over the church. In fact, he barely made it in time right before Sidney Rigdon was going to take over the church. It was almost miraculous that they had what I call the showdown in the groves, that we so famously know, where the mantle of Joseph fell on Brigham. That almost didn't happen. So let's get back to what we do know. We do know that a mob met in Warsaw. There was 2 army regiments from Warsaw and one from nearby Green Plains, led by Levi Williams. And they met the morning of the martyrdom, June 27th, 1844. And they went up to, and I think I've got a slide there for you. You want to show that?
Yeah,
it's a map.
Pull it up here.
First one's a copy of my book on Warsaw that's available on Amazon. I'm not necessarily here to sell books, but the second one is a map. And they met. Warsaw is a river town 18 miles south of Nauvoo, and it's also 18 miles from Carthage. Well, the mob met that morning and said, we know Joseph Smith's over in Carthage. He's We've been an enemy to him for a long time. They actually wrote in the paper kind of a call to arms a few days prior, and they said that they were so mad at the Expositor newspaper being destroyed. Thomas Sharp, the editor, put out a call and said, let's make our feelings known with powder and ball. So they met the morning of June 27th, and they marched part way up to a place called Golden's Point. They talked for a while. Do we go on to Carthage? Do we go home? The governor Thomas Ford was in Nauvoo at the time. He heard that their mob was at Golden's Point. He sent a messenger, told them to go home. About the same time, a guy named Frank Worrell was a guard in the Carthage Grays, and he heard that the mob was there in Golden's Point. It's kind of right in the middle of the triangle there. And he sent a note. He says, now's the time to do the deed. And
so let me get this straight. So you have a mob that assembles. This is all documented.
Oh yeah.
And they say, it's documented, they're going to go do the deed, kill Joseph Smith. And then they do it, right?
So here's what happens. They storm Carthage jail. Carthage Grays, fire blinks in the air. People go up the stairs. There's a gunfight. 2 people are shot in the hallway by Joseph Smith's guns. Now, Joseph Smith had 2 guns, right? He had Wheelock's pepper box, and he shoots where the threat is. Upstairs in the bedroom is Hiram, Joseph, John Taylor, and Willard Richards. If Willard Richards or John Taylor had a gun and was firing on Joseph, he would have shot them instead of down the hall. The hallway, the stairway in the hall.
Because if they were the threat, he would have shot at them. But we know for a fact that Joseph shot at the mob that was coming up the stairs.
Two were injured. In fact, the reason we know this is that the next year a grand jury met, and they charged 8 people with a crime. And at the real trial, 3 of them didn't show up. Willis, Gallagher, and Voorhees didn't show up. 2 of them had wounds from that gunfight in the stairway that Joseph Smith shot him. So we know who was in the hallway, at least 2 of them. Well, what happened was, and this really kind of seals the deal here. Most people are familiar that Joseph Smith went to the window and either jumped out or fell out, and he yelled, "Oh Lord, my God." It was the beginning of the Masonic cry for help, right? That's well known by and well established by many writers, right?
Yeah.
Well, he was alive, right? When he yelled, he hits the ground. He's very much alive. Now, he's been shot, but the mob leans him up against the well and shoots him firing squad. Now, I personally believe that what happened to John Taylor, he was shot 5 times and he recovered. I personally believe Joseph Smith could have recovered with medical help. John Taylor and Willard Richards didn't kill him.
Yeah.
He was alive.
He was alive at the time that he fell. At the time that
they laid him up on the well.
So how could they have killed him if he was out of the room when he died? Right.
And he died because a firing squad shot at him. Levi Williams and Jacob Davies and there's 5 people stood trial, and name slips my mind. I've been to his tombstone in Warsaw. Come to me, but there was 5 people, lined him up, shot him. They went home that night to the Warsaw house, which was a tavern, hotel, restaurant, and this is where it gets really fun. The mob comes back from killing Joseph Smith. They didn't know it at the time, or it wasn't well known, that the waitress there was 18-year-old Eliza Graham. She was a member of the church. Her aunt and uncle ran the place, the Flemings, Anne Fleming, and her husband. They were not members of the church. Well, the mob comes back and starts bragging how they killed Joseph Smith, not knowing that Eliza Graham was a member of the church. She mentally takes notes of who said where, what they said, and how they said it. In the trial in 1845, they call her, now 19, to be the star witness for the prosecution. And she testified of who said what, or where they said, who said what, and how they said it.
So we have a mob that assembles. They go to the jail to kill Joseph Smith. Joseph Smith is killed outside of the room where John Taylor is. And then you have that same mob afterwards going out and bragging about the fact that they did it. But yet some people today want to say, no, they didn't do it.
It gets better. It gets better because they published in the Warsaw newspaper a few days later that they did it. And I have a copy of it. And then they stood trial for it. And they never denied it. And then the judge throws it out. There's quite a bit of
if someone is going to, you know, if I didn't kill someone, I would probably mention I didn't kill them.
Right. They never once, in fact, just the opposite. Not only did they put it in the paper and they stood trial for it, they never fingered Taylor and Richards and said they were part of this. You should try them. They never said. In fact, the proof that there wasn't a conspiracy is in 1840.
Why would they cooperate with the Mormons that they wanted to expel from the area anyway?
That's it. In 1846, they expelled the Mormons in 3 major waves, starting with Brigham Young's leaving in 1840.
So why would anyone think that they did it? Why would what do they say?
Well, just let me finish this. So they kicked out the Mormons and the Brigham Young, and none of them ever said, "Hey, why are you kicking us out? Remember back at Carthage Jail, we made this little pact, secret pact, and now you're kicking." They never once said that. And then to top it off, many of them went to their graves saying that they had participated in the murder of Joseph Smith. Thomas Sharp was the main newspaper editor. He kind of had this funny saying. He was asked, "Did you kill Joseph Smith?" And he looked kind of funny, and he said, "Well, the jury said not." He never denied it. Okay. Yeah. So here's where this other group comes from. Just little phrases and you know, journals. For instance, here's what happened at the trial. Okay. Eliza Graham testified, but in the audience, they called witnesses that were friendly to the mob.
Yeah. And
so they said, "Well, did you see so-and-so there?" And the witness would kind of do, if you remember the old Hogan's Hero shows, there was a guard, Sergeant Schultz, and he would say, "I know nothing. I see nothing." They gave that type of response. They didn't want to get their friends into, "Oh, I didn't see Thomas Sharp there. I didn't see Levi Williams there. I didn't see anybody there."
Haven't they made a case of like, oh, the forensics don't work and things like that? I've heard them try and make some kind of a forensic argument.
They have tried to make that. A guy named Taylor Smith as well as Sam Weston have made extensive videos showing that this Who Killed Joseph Smith movie has got it all wrong. In fact, in Who Killed Joseph Smith 2, they have a forensic guy that really doesn't concur completely with this theory as well, their own expert. But Taylor Smith, you can Google that. He just destroys it. He goes in. There was all these bullet holes, you know, weeks later, and there was definitely a gunfight. There people go in and document that there was all these bullet holes inside the bedroom. But even if there wasn't, Joseph Smith wasn't killed in the bedroom.
Yeah.
It wasn't Taylor and Richards. They did a lousy job because they didn't do it. He was still alive when he left the jail.
Trying to make that fit with what we know, and even with what the mob would have had every incentive to say they didn't do it, and all the evidence points to the fact that they did. And no one disputes this. This is like everybody knows, like, Joseph Smith was killed by a mob in Carthage,
up against the well, not upstairs in the bedroom where Taylor and Richards were.
Yeah, so, and they get shot in the process. Like what?
Yeah, Taylor had 5 shots, and the ball grazed Richards. You don't think they would have stopped and opened the door and said, "Stop! Don't shoot! They're dead. We're on your side. We're friends. Remember, we made this secret pact nobody knows about." No, they almost got killed themselves. So again, the mob said that they were going to do it. They did it. They said that night they did it. They published in the paper that they did it. They stood trial for doing it, and they went to their grave saying that they did it.
Yeah,
and believe it or not, some people are believing this well dramatized movie claiming differently. My message here is the narrative that the church has told us is true. Okay, what we read in the Saints, what we read in other books. If somebody really wants to do a deep dive, I cover that just in one chapter. My book is a broader history of Warsaw, but Dallin Oak's Carthage Conspiracy with Marv Hill is the gold standard for anybody who wants to read about the actual trial and what happened. There's other books. There's one that I've got that's over 1,000 pages. It documents so much. But the church has told us the truth. The martyrdom of Joseph Smith was done by his enemies, mostly from Warsaw and Green Plains. We know who stood trial for it, and it was not an inside job. And if somebody tries to tell you that it is, or leads you out of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints because they're trying to put forth some succession coup or something, it's just junk.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I think this has been good, and hope everybody enjoyed it.
Thank you, Jacob.
So do you enjoy the content here on Thoughtful Faith? If so, be sure to hit the notification bell. This ensures that our new videos show up on your feed. Also, be sure to check out our Facebook group called Thoughtful Saints, where myself and others discuss the sorts of topics found on this channel. And lastly, if you think other people would benefit from this video, please be sure to share it.